So, um, so as I mentioned, today's session is the culminating session as part of our spring academic integrity week. My name is Jacques Zelma. I serve as the director for the Office of Academic Integrity, and I'll be your host for the session. And I'm very excited to bring Helen Choi to this session to be able to kind of anchor our long week of promoting academic integrity. Before we begin, as you probably already noticed when you entered, I'd like to mention that the session is going to be recorded, in fact, is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website at a later time. Please feel free to add any questions to the chat, and there will be a time for Q&A at the end. Also, after I introduce you, Helen, you might want to share if you wish for the questions just to be at the end, or if you'd like to incorporate them into your talk, however you prefer. But with that, I'd really like to welcome you. Thank you, Helen, for being here, for taking the time to share your knowledge with us today. Today's session, as I hope that you've gathered from the abstract, is really aimed to provide alternative options when evaluating writing assignments. And so with that, I'd just like to turn the mic over to you, Helen. Thank you again. And with that, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I'll just share my screen here so I can show you my slides. Sorry. Okay, so thanks so much. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat at any time during the talk or at the end. It's up to you. But I kind of wanted to talk about this idea that I had for assessing writing called the timed revision exam. And so today I'll kind of talk about the traditional portfolio exam that I have. I'm sorry, the traditional portfolio assignment that I have in my Writing 340 classes. Then I'll kind of outline my idea for a timed revision exam, and then hopefully we'll have some fun discussion and some questions at the end. So just to give you a little bit of background, I've been teaching Writing 340, which is the required writing course, and I teach the engineering version, and I've been doing that for a few years now. And part of the course is the portfolio assignment, and this is the assignment that all the 340 instructors have, I believe, and it's the summative assessment for 340. And so what that means is students rewrite their previously submitted papers, and then they integrate all the great content and the suggestions that they have from their instructors, and then resubmit those papers at the end as their portfolio assignment. But in the past few semesters, I've noticed that there's an increasing number of portfolios that seem to have quite a lot of machine-generated content. And given that, submitting AI-generated content doesn't really help students meet learning objectives for the course, and it might violate some principles of academic integrity, and also because I personally find it, very demoralizing to have to deal with machine-generated content and go through the academic integrity process, I kind of wanted to explore some new ways to approach portfolio so it's more productive. So I kind of wanted to think about, like, one, how can I enhance our confidence in student authorship? How can I make it easier for my students and for me to act with, greater integrity? And also kind of think more broadly about what duties do I have as an instructor to really think about, the quality and efficacy of the assignments in my class. So just to give you a little bit of background, so the traditional portfolio, I think it's about 2 decades old as sort of this like widely adopted idea. And it kind of aligns with the growth of this idea that we should teach writing across the curriculum. And we've had Writing 340 at at USC for, I think, about 2 decades. And the sort of the final exam right now is that rather than have students, furiously write for X number of hours for a new prompt, they will rewrite their previously submitted papers and really substantially revise them, thereby, kind of showing how much they've learned over the semester. And then usually in the portfolio, there's a reflection component as well. And so students kind of take a step back and engage in lots of metacognitive learning and think about, what have I learned? How has my writing improved? How has my critical thinking improved and expanded? And then all of these portfolios are gathered together in a faculty panel review. So there's a day called Portfolio Day, and the 340 instructors get together, and I think in theory, everyone shares um, their portfolios, and we grade each other's portfolios, thereby sort of establishing a normative level of grading and kind of learning about what other instructors are doing. This is a really great assignment, actually, because one, it takes a lot of the exam pressure off, during finals time, which is great. Students can work on it at home. They can devote as long or as short amount of time and effort as they want. It almost assures that they will look at the instructor feedback, because writing instructors take hours and hours to make really good comments on student work. So it's nice that students will actually open up their document and read the feedback, which is great. And it gives students like a really great sense of agency, like they are in control of this process and they can decide how and when to make the revisions. And that's really important for self-regulated learning. But I have found, and maybe more skillful instructors, can do this better. But I have found there are some equity issues with respect to portfolio. And here's an example. So if you have a student who starts the semester with a paper that's a B+ or A- paper, for them to improve that paper, um, at the end of the semester is probably going to require less work, less reflection, less engagement than a student who submits a C paper at the start of the semester and is trying very hard to lift that paper up to whatever grade they're shooting for. And in my experience, I think it's very rare for a student to lift that C paper up um, to an A or even a B+ level, because there's quite a lot of work to be done if you're at that C level. So even if you have a grading contract where you're guaranteed a B, I think it's very difficult to lift that paper up to an A. I'm sure students have done it, and maybe more skillful instructors have been able to see that jump, but I've found it very difficult, and I've seen sort of students trapped at a certain grade level. And in a sense, they're penalized twice if they're coming in with less writing experience than other students. Also, because it is a take-home exam, you have some issues of academic integrity. We're not always sure who did the writing. Sometimes, you want to see students improve their writing, but then when you see an improvement that's exponential, or it's written in a different voice, you can kind of tell maybe they've had some extra help. And also, because they're rewriting entire papers, sometimes it's too much information. I can usually tell, like, the strengths and weaknesses without having to read through like 2 or 3 giant papers again. And at the same time, sometimes it provides too little information. I know I'm complaining a lot, but too little in the sense that the revision process is just one skill set, and maybe I've taught other skills that aren't being assessed in this portfolio. And then finally, the portfolio readings. And this is just from my own experience. And I will say it's limited to myself, but I have found that the portfolio readings, as they're conducted right now at USC, don't give the full portfolio readings for all of our students. And so, in my opinion, I feel like if we cannot deliver that for our students, I don't think we should assign it. And so, you know, maybe it's just limited to the portfolio readings that I've been involved in, but I think they're very limited, and you know, it could be improved. That doesn't mean that I think, you know, we should be locked in a room for 12 hours and read each other's papers or anything like that. I don't think anyone wants that. But I do think it might be a sign that maybe the assessment itself could use a second look. So anyway, I have been really struggling with the portfolio, both on the assessment side and in terms of the student work that I've been seeing. So I really wanted to see, like, what do I want my students to take away from my writing class? You know, how can I make sure I'm really accurately assessing what my students have learned and not just grading like skill level that they likely already came in with? And how can I make sure like I'm enhancing my own integrity in the process? So I came up with this idea, and it's not my idea. I took it from lots of other writing instructors, but it's a timed revision exam. And so it would be the final exam in lieu of rewriting all of those portfolio papers. So it's the final exam, closed book, and it's two parts. Part one, a student will select an excerpt from their own writing previously submitted, and they will revise it, applying the principles that I'm asking them to think about during our course. Then part two is sort of them demonstrating an ability to reflect upon their writing and to understand how these revisions have improved their writing in some way. So in a small way, this is an abbreviated portfolio because it is a revision of one's writing and also includes that reflection. So what's really great about it is, like the portfolio, it's personalized. It's just there's the student's own writing. I do think it's more focused, so I'm not looking at like the overall paper. So I believe that it might mitigate that double penalty for students who are coming in less prepared for writing. It has a revision and reflection element. And because it's an exam setting, I'll be using a lockdown browser. There's an enhanced probability that, you know, I know who wrote the submission. And because I'll be grading this final exam with the rubrics that I use in my course, I feel like there's enhanced assessment integrity on my part. And but I don't want to sort of go back in time and do the traditional timed essay. Like you know, when I went to school, I took tons of blue book exams where, you know, you just go in with a pencil and, you know, high hopes. And, you know, you're given a blue book and a prompt you may not have seen before. And, you know, you just write as fast as you can. So that's what's called first draft writing. And it's been criticized too as being sort of unresponsive to sort of the communal nature of writing, because writing is sort of, you know, you need other people. And and this is just sort of single, it's just the individual writer. And also lots of people will say it's an inauthentic task, because they'll ask, well, you know, when in life will you ever be asked to sit down and produce a piece of writing in this short period of time? Where the timed revision exam is slightly different, you're revising writing that's your own. You have to consider other people, your reader, and also the person giving you feedback, and, you know, all sort of the experiences that you've had during the semester with your classmates. I do think maybe the timed essay is becoming more relevant, because just like we're seeing here in other contexts, people want to avoid seeing machine generated content and really try to assess writing, you know, abilities. And so, for example, in some jobs, they used to have a like a writing sample, and they would give you 24 to 48 hours. For example, at Amazon, that was a very common part of the employment process. But now they've gotten rid of that take home aspect, and they're just saying you're going to log in at this time. You will use a lockdown browser, and you'll have to respond to the prompt. So it's very similar to like graduate school. Lots of graduate schools now have a timed writing prompt, in addition to a timed interview, where you have to log into platforms like Kiva, and they'll say, here's a prompt, here's a question, and they'll give you some samples, and then they'll give you the real question, and then you'll present your answer. So in that way, I do think timed writing is becoming slightly more relevant in some employment and some school contexts. But of course, with the traditional timed essay and the timed revision exam have in common is test anxiety, which is terrible, and we want to make sure we mitigate that. And so hopefully some things that I can do to sort of mitigate test anxiety is one, after I give the students all my comments to all of their work that will be in the portfolio. That's going to be about week 11. So at week 11, I'm going to post my final exam and plead with them to come to office hours to discuss, etc. But then also I'll probably devote, some portions of class to discussing the prompt and discussing some ways, that they might approach it. I'm thinking of some smaller assignments that I can do to get them ready to do the portfolio exam as well. And then also add some elements of student choice, like maybe I'll let them choose which paper that they would like to revise or choose the excerpt. Definitely they can choose the excerpt, but I'm trying to think about other ways to integrate more student choice so they feel like really set up for success. Some of the challenges, though, because it's personalized, so during the final exam, I am going to give them hard copies of their previously submitted work. So that's one thing like I have to figure out how to do. So if you have any suggestions, let me know. So I have to make sure I do that. And then there's the whole like final exam administration, just making sure I set it up on Brightspace, lockdown browser, etc. Making sure I know when my final exam is and what time it is, which seems obvious, but when I saw like the schedule, it's a little harder than it looks. And then also it is like very limited. So to the extent that, the portfolio is many, many pages long, this exam is, more limited. And so if an instructor wants to assess things that go beyond, just an excerpt, I think this exam might fall short in that way. So here's a sample prompt. So part one, I would ask the students to select an excerpt from their assignment, and it might be, I might give them a choice between two or something like that. I haven't really thought about that yet. And because it's only a 2-hour exam, I'm going to limit them to, one paragraph or 2 consecutive paragraphs, just in case they want to show me how they can, connect ideas or something like that. And then I'm going to ask them very specifically how I want them to revise that excerpt. It's not just make it better or, something like that, but it's going to be more specific as to particular writing principles. And then part two will be the revision, explanation, and reflection portion of the exam. And I think in that way, this is the part where you can, as the instructor, do lots of, inventive things and ways that you want your students to think about their writing over the semester. So I kind of wanted to show you, I was very fortunate to have Susie at CET help me with this portfolio exam. Again, you can see this would be the sample. I would post it on Brightspace around week 11. and really like make a big fuss so they, take a look at it. And then so they would just come to the final exam. They know they'll be using the lockdown browser. It would be a closed book. They don't have to worry about providing their previously submitted work because I'll be giving them a copy of it. Then part one is select an excerpt. And then here you can kind of see what I want them to integrate. So I have these 3 draft workshops, and in each draft workshop, I just focus on one thing and I really just hammer it into their heads about it. And so if they just have heard about the draft workshops or just come to it and just like pay attention 50% of the time, they will know what revision technique that I'm talking about. And so they just have to apply one of those of the 3. And then I use a textbook and some revision strategies that we talk about throughout the semester, and I want them to apply some of those. And just in case, like just to kind of reinforce that, in part 2, I think you can do lots of things here. You can just have a reflection that's more open-ended. If you're more interested in control, like I clearly am, you can kind of see here what I'm doing is I want you to show me in your excerpt exactly what you did, what technique you applied, and how it affected the writing. And so this is sort of easy for me to do in my class because my class is sort of structured in this way. But if other writing instructors, are less tied to techniques and such, they can, approach this revision in a more sort of probably more nuanced and open-ended, probably more imaginative way as well. So that's a sample and sample exam that I'm sure you can customize to your class. All right. So anyway, it was kind of terrible. I have to say, getting some of the portfolios, but I was really fortunate to work with the Office of Academic Integrity to kind of think about, how to teach my students in a way that kind of avoided sort of these minefields in academic integrity. And I'm hoping that thinking about assessments in this way, not just the portfolio, but other ones as well, it's a really great opportunity to sort of improve my teaching, improve sort of the classroom experience, because one of the things that really kind of made me sad about AI, because I do think AI has like a good role in classrooms and such, was that I did feel like it was this overarching sort of feeling of negativity in the classroom, this feeling of why do I have to learn writing if this machine can do it, because it's a required course. So I have a lot of reluctant writers. So we have that sort of feeling that should be acknowledged and talked about. And then also feelings from the instructor side, that sort of feeling powerless in terms of, how do I identify? I know in my heart this is AI generated writing, but I don't have a lot of proof, and proof is very difficult. And sort of those feelings have really eroded sort of like the feeling of community in the classroom. But I just think, kind of thinking about how we move forward together with our students, I think, has been really helpful to me. And hopefully the timed revision exam is sort of just a small step towards that. So that's all I had for myself. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments.
Helen, I want to say thank you so much for sharing these insights. I'm going to give people a chance to consider the questions they may have. You can either put them in the chat or come off of mute and answer them directly or ask them directly. But I just really appreciate, one of the takeaways for me as a non-instructor is the understanding that we have to continuously evaluate our approaches as well as that of our students, so that we can make sure that we are doing right by them and by the university. So I think that this demonstrates really kind of a novel approach to looking at something that's been around for a couple of decades, and kind of understand, not wanting to take away that there's obviously there's reason and rationale and usefulness of this approach, but looking at how can we do better, how can we make this a better, as I said, better for the students, but also better to inform you as the instructor what actually has been gained through the experience in class. So thank you for that. Okay, well, I think I have paused long enough. Apparently, your chat was just so spot on. There are no questions, or people don't want to ask it in the recording, which I absolutely understand. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the recording and thank you just once again, Helen, for your insights, your expertise, your time, and and for your partnership in general. It's been great working with you. Why don't we go ahead and close the recording, and then